Okay, good morning. We're live. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask the clerk for a roll call, please. Councillor Shortreed.
Present.
Councillor Dayu.
Present.
Councillor Barry.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Present.
Mayor Moffat. Present. Thank you. For approval of the agenda, I'm going to add an item following yesterday's EOC meeting. I'm adding an item on the Dorset Tower. I earlier this morning signed the notification to lift the declaration of emergency, and so that's a decision that will now fall to council. So I'm adding that. So may I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that the August 12th, 2021 council meeting agenda be approved as amended.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, we'll move along. I have no remarks. Adoption of the minutes. We have several sets. May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as circulated. July 15th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes, July 15th, 2021 public meeting minutes, July 22nd, 2021 special meeting minutes.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 7, public meetings. May I have a resolution to go, a mover and a seconder to go into the public meeting? Councillor Barry, Councillor Dayu. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved the council adjourn its regular meeting at 9:01 a.m. to proceed into a public meeting for the purposes of discussing the following. 1. Zoning bylaw amendment application AHZBA 00421, part of lot 16, concession 6, geographic township of McClintock, Roland. 2. Zoning bylaw amendment application AHZBA 00521, part of lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, Richard. Zoning bylaw amendment AHZBA 00621, part of lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope and Richard.
Sorry. All in favor? Carried. We'll bring in Mr. O'Callaghan. And has the agent arrived for this? No, okay. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning.
First up is the application in the name of Roland, if you'd like to take us through that.
Sure. So this property is located on Crozier Lake Drive. It's zoned shoreline residential 2 and designated waterfront under the official plan. The property is approximately 1.17 acres in area with 91.44 meters of frontage on McFadden Lake. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential and the lands are currently developed. Council at its regular meeting of May 6, 2021 approved consent application H 1821 to sever this property, which inadvertently merged on title. The subject lands are currently developed with 2 separate dwellings, each serviced by their own septic system and water supply. The applicant is proposing to sever the lands, resulting in each dwelling being located on a separate lot. This zoning bylaw amendment application has been received in accordance with condition of that severance. The zoning bylaw amendment will rezone the proposed retained lands from shoreline residential 2 to shoreline residential 2 exception 56 to recognize a deficient lot area of 0.31 hectares. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will also recognize the existing structures as legal non-complying. It will also rezone the proposed severed lands from shoreline residential 2 to shoreline residential 2 exception 57 to recognize a deficient lot frontage of 30.48 meters and a lot area of 0.15 hectares. It will also recognize the existing structures as legal non-complying. Notice of the rezoning was advertised, posted on the property, circulated to property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website, and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received to date, and staff are recommending approval of the proposed bylaw.
Does council have any questions or any final clarifications on this application? Nope, and no agent. Okay. Thank you for that. We will move to the next one then. The first of the two in the name of Richard.
Yes, this property is located on Chelsea Lane, zoned rural residential and designated rural and waterfront under the official plan. The property is approximately 1.07 acres in area with 45.72 meters of frontage on Chelsea Lane. Surrounding uses are generally rural residential and shoreline residential, and the lands are currently vacant. The applicant is proposing to construct a single-family dwelling. However, section 4.12.1 of the zoning bylaw requires vacant lots to have frontage on an improved public street in order to be considered eligible for development. The lands are currently accessed by a privately maintained road. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will rezone the subject lands from rural residential to rural residential exception 12 to permit development of a single family dwelling on a lot without frontage on an improved public street. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website, and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received to date, and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Any questions from council on this? And just as a note, my apologies if I seem a bit slow today. I'm having trouble with Civic Web, and I can't scroll through the documents, so I'm having to do it sort of manually along the side. So just bear with me as I try and follow along the agenda. And have we had an agent come in on this? No. Okay. Great. Then we'll just move to the last one, which is also in the name of Richard.
Yes, this is very similar to the previous application. So this property is also located on Chelsea Lane, zoned rural residential, designated rural under the rural and waterfront under the official plan. The lands are approximately 1.05 acres in area with 45.41 meters of frontage on Chelsea Lane. Surrounding uses are generally rural residential and shoreline residential, and the lands are currently vacant. Again, the applicant is proposing to construct a single-family dwelling. However, section 4.12.1 requires vacant lots to have frontage on an improved public street, which this lot does not. The proposal is to rezone the lands from rural residential to rural residential exception 13 to permit development of a single-family dwelling on a lot without frontage on an improved public street. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website, and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received, and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. Any questions from council? And I'm just gonna ask one last time, still no agent. Okay, that's fine. These are pretty straightforward, so I just want to make sure nobody is excluded. Okay, if there are no further questions then from council, may I have a mover and a seconder to resume the regular meeting of council? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayou.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayou, be it resolved the public meeting adjourns at 9:08 a.m. and the regular council meeting resumed.
All in favor? That's carried. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report for the Roland application? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry, be it resolved council receives report PL 5921 regarding the rezoning of lands located at part of lot 16, concession 6, geographic township, McClintock, submitted by Sean O'Callahan and dated August 12th, 2021, and the council directs a bylaw be brought forward for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. May I have a mover and a seconder for that bylaw? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Berry, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-82 being bylaw to rezone property located at part of lot 16, concession 6, geographic township of McClintock, application AHZBA 00421 from the shoreline residential 2 SR2 zone to shoreline residential 2 exception, SR2 exception zone, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report for the first Richard application? Councillor Short-Reed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson, be it resolved that council receives report PL 6021 regarding the rezoning of lands located at part of lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated August 12, 2021. And the council directs a bylaw be brought forward for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. May I have a mover and a seconder for that bylaw? Councillor Vayu, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Short-Reed, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-83 being a bylaw to rezone property located at part of lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, application AHZBA 00521 from the rural residential RR zone to rural residential exception RR exception zone, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And finally, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report on the second Richard application? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Short-Reed.
By Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed, be it resolved that council receives report PL 6121 regarding the rezoning of lands located as part of lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated August 12, 2021. And the council directs a bylaw be brought forward for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. And lastly, a mover and a seconder for this last bylaw. Councillor Barry, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Short-Reed, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-84, being a bylaw to rezone property located at part of lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, application AHZBA 00621, from the rural residential RR zone to rural residential exception RR exception zone, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. We'll see you later on.
Yes, thank you.
Item number 8, delegations. We have Mr. March from the county's IT department, and so we'll bring him in. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Mayor Moffat and members of council.
We're circling back on our audiovisual setup for the council chamber. So if you would take us through, we're circling back because we've had some investigation originally, and we need to make a decision. So take us through your report, please.
Thank you. If you recall, as you mentioned, I did present a report to council last fall on a plan to allow hybrid meetings when we should have in-person meetings again in the council chambers. My original solution consisted of a wireless microphone system and a mounted camera that would capture the entire view of the council chambers. During that meeting, council had expressed a desire to have participants on screen when speaking, and asked if it was possible for participants to continue to use Zoom from a laptop when participating in person in the council chambers. And then I was tasked to test this scenario and report back to council at a later date. So working with Algonquin Highlands staff, we did test a scenario with on how a meeting could potentially work with several people in the chambers all running Zoom from their laptops. And while technically it would work, there are a number of potential issues that would have to be controlled for, and I noted those in the report. The biggest issue in my mind still is the potential for feedback disrupting the meeting should someone's speaker or microphone become unmuted. And when that happens, it is quite disruptive, and the meeting would have to be put or would have to come to a halt until we figured out what was happening. There's also the potential for bandwidth issues due to the extra people streaming within the building. And then there's also the potential for last minute problems with council's personal equipment. So knowing that this solution has a number of issues associated with it, I decided to investigate other options that would still achieve the more personal viewing experience that council had desired. The first option would involve the use of a what's called a meeting owl conferencing unit. The meeting owl has a built-in speaker, microphone, and a 360-degree camera, and is about the size of a 1-liter pop bottle. And I have that right here for you. This unit would be placed on a table in the middle of the meeting space, and the 360-degree camera would automatically focus on whomever is speaking, showing up to 3 people on the screen at any given time, and then panning to speakers as they start speaking. I included a screenshot in the report to show you how that would look like. So while this is the cheaper of the 2 options I looked at and would be fairly simple to set up and operate, there are a number of caveats to be aware of, and I've listed those in the report. I also included a link to the County of Frontenac's YouTube page, as they have been running hybrid meetings with Meeting Owl for some time. Second option that I looked at would be an expansion to the original solution presented last fall. We would still use the same microphone system and the what I call the bird's eye view camera, but we could also add several other in-room cameras, potentially on the 2 side walls there. The meeting host could then switch between these different cameras as different councillors are speaking, but as noted in the report, only 1 camera would be live within Zoom at any given time. And while this solution would provide the best audio visual experience, it would also be the most expensive and the most complex for staff and IT to manage. I included a link to the City of Quarter Lake's YouTube page, as they are using a similar setup. And just as a note, I have been told that it does take their team several hours to prepare their equipment for a council meeting. So for each option, including the in-person Zoom option, I've included the costs in the report, as well as some optional items that council may wish to consider. That's a brief summary of the report. I'm happy to take any questions that council may have.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think we probably all have lots to say. I'm going to go to Councillor Barry and then to Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Just a question on option 3. What does, when it says all in-room participants run Zoom from their laptops, what does the $4,500 cover? Like, what is that if we all have existing laptops?
Yep. So you would still need a streaming computer. The computer that you've been using now to stream these meetings actually belongs to the county. It's a spare computer. We don't have an immediate use for it, but we will need to take it back at some point. So we'll need to replace that with a computer that the host would run Zoom from. There's still some cabling. There's still some streaming software, a sound card that goes along with that computer. So that's basically what that is. And a microphone for in the middle of the table. Because although you're all using your laptops, we still need a camera and actually we wouldn't need a camera for this instance, but we would still need one central microphone because you all can't have your microphones operating from your laptops, because that's how feedback loops start.
Does that answer your question there, Lisa? Liz, go ahead, please.
Mike, you've mentioned that for option 2, it would take a couple of hours set up for a council meeting. Is that initial setup, or is that every council meeting?
Well, if I may, I'm not sure yet. Once we start, I can't see it taking a couple of hours. I wanted to make a note of that because, again, the system we're recommending is similar to what City of Quarter Lakes uses, and again, I've been told it does take a few hours. I'd imagine it wouldn't take I can't see how it would take a couple of hours. I could be wrong as we start digging into it. But it definitely would be the more complex one to manage, because again, with several cameras, the meeting host would have to switch between them manually to catch people as they're speaking on the screen.
Yeah, that point right there to me is the challenge. I think it's, there's enough work to be done by the folks sitting in the room right now that are running the meeting to add to that work. Somebody having to switch the cameras every time is a problem for me on that option for sure. Liz, did you want to have a follow-up, or do you have a different question? Because Jen wants to say something too.
Yeah, a follow-up. I think that Mike was saying that on option 2, we would need an individual camera on both sides of the room, and I'm not sure that that would work given the bank of windows on one wall.
Yeah, there could be some lighting challenges there. Mike, what say ye on that?
Yes, if I may, we would definitely have to work within the confines of the room. So it wouldn't necessarily be like it might not be the best camera angle. If it has to be put up above the
Right.
windows, kind of looking down, we could probably work with it, but it wouldn't be, it's not a professional production company.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Of course it is. Councillor Dayu.
Thank you. Mike, thanks so much for this work. I really appreciated the still images and links. That was really helpful. So I don't feel I've got many questions. In fact, I don't have any questions. I just want to state where I've landed. I am partial to the meeting owl myself, but I'm not partial to the $9,000 bill attached to it. And I just wonder, what is the scope for modernization funding to be used here? Because if we can't apply modernization funding, I do believe my vote is going to land with the Zoom, and we'll just, we'll work hard to figure it out, and everyone will be good. And I hear that there could be some things that would be a challenge to manage, but we've done pretty well so far. Our learning curve has been good, and I would hope that our learning curve with Zoom in the room would be also strong. And an extra laptop. I'm happy to cough up money for that. But so again, meeting owl, if we can find modernization money, and if not, then Zoom in room would be my preference.
Yeah, I found the link to, I'm sorry, without scrolling, which I'm having trouble with, whoever's using the meeting owl Frontenac, I found it slow and clunky, and because it follows sound, if one person is speaking but someone else is, I don't know, closing a drawer or putting a coffee cup down or something, does that mean that the owl is going to go off the person who's talking? I just found it really slow, and I didn't really care for it at all. And I just wonder why we can't have, the eye in the sky. And I don't know what everybody has in front of them, but I'm sitting at home. I have, a desktop screen. Right now I have a laptop screen, so I have little tiny faces and a little tiny agenda on the bottom. So it's harder to watch the faces and work with the agenda on a laptop in front of you. So if we do go with the Zoom option, that folks might need, depending on their personal preferences, to bring an iPad or something. I think Liz works off 2 computers, but just be warned that it's very small. If you have, I have all your faces across the top of my laptop, and on the bottom of my laptop, I have the agenda open. So I don't know what everyone else has on their screen, but just be warned of that. Councillor Dayu, or no, actually, sorry, Liz, your hand was up first.
Yeah, I just was, I hate to say it, but my preference was the City of Kawartha Lakes, but it is awfully expensive. But I'm wondering about the option of using our laptops. It would mean that we'd have, if we're meeting in the council chambers, 2 laptops in front of us.
Well, that's what I'm saying, quite possibly. And Jen is going to give us a gem of wisdom from her perspective. Go ahead, Jen.
Unless I am completely misunderstanding the points, for me, we wouldn't be looking at each other on the screen at all because we would be in the same room. So we could minimize Zoom on our screen and have our work in front of us the way we always do, but our little camera will still be on. But I'm not going to look at Deputy Mayor Danielson through the screen when she's sitting right beside me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Depending on how many people we can have, the council chambers is not a big room. We may still have to have faces on the screen if there are staff members who are zooming in because we can't have. So right now there's a county person and 2 Algonquin Highlands staff members in this room running this meeting technically. So they would remain in the room. And if we are on capacity limits and then you put all of us in here, staff may still have to zoom in if having them in the room, or others is going to put us over the capacity limits or challenges of the space. So just one more consideration in that regard. But you're right, Jen, if we're all in the same room, It doesn't have to be open, but it could be. Go ahead, Jen.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, another option, and I know we're getting into details now, but if you not minimize to the bottom of your screen, but if you just make your screen very small, what Zoom will do is give you a window about that size with just the speaker's face in it that you can place in the corner, so that yes, you are sharing screen, but 80%, 90% of your screen is the document, and just a box is the one person who's speaking, which for those of us who are not running the meeting is probably sufficient, is my guess.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I still think that there's a way that we can get around these challenges without spending the public dime on beautiful equipment that I just don't think is the priority for us.
Oh, I have no intention of spending 29,000 personally. I would not support 29 grand. I would love that option. It would certainly, I think, be the sweetest and most efficient, but is time consuming for staff and has some complexities, as has been noted. But we have far bigger financial fish to fry than $29,000 on a live streaming system, in my opinion. I agree with you. Deputy Mayor Liz, and then Lisa Berry.
Mike, I understand that you've already settled on systems in other of our municipalities. I'm just wondering what their choices were.
So if I may, there's been a system put in place for the county, Dysart and Minden Hills, and it's basically the first option that I proposed last fall. So Dysart's actually been using theirs, even though they're not doing in person, they just still have Mayor Roberts in the council chambers. What we've done there is we've purchased the TV, and that TV is included in the quote. And if you wanted to use your existing TV to save some money there, that's something we could look at. But basically, a TV's on a stand, pulled back a little bit in front of Councillor Roberts. The camera's sitting on top of a shelf on that TV and kind of zoomed in, and it's worked quite well. So knowing that this would probably work in phases, because one of the challenges here is we don't know what the future is going to look like yet, but I imagine there's probably going to be a situation where council's in the chambers, but there's no public participation. There's nobody from the public in there. So rather, you could have a TV move back a bit, the camera on it. It would be zoomed in, so it wouldn't be as close as obviously a Zoom camera, but it might not be as far back as mounted back in the ceiling. But that's basically what's been implemented at the county, Minden Hills and Dysart. Highlands East is a bit of a different animal. We're trying to work out. They have some audio issues as they are in a gymnasium for their council chamber, so a solution hasn't been decided upon yet. But I imagine it might be a variation of my original suggestion.
So, Mike, in that regard, then, back to our immediately previous discussion around faces on screens, then. So the faces on the screen for Mayor Roberts are actually on a TV in front of her. Presumably then on her computer screen is simply the agenda and whatever notes she has.
I believe so. I believe that's what she has. But on the TV is the Zoom screen.
And so then if all of council, if we were all sitting in this room and we had the screen, we're all familiar with the space where a delegate would normally sit. I don't know if we would be entertaining delegations or not. Then could we have either delegations or staff? Their faces would come up on that screen, and it would be like they were here, except it would be on a TV screen and not on our individual computers.
That's correct.
Is that then, Jen, as you were saying, there's a workaround for that, is the TV becomes the conduit, not our individual screens. And that's less expensive and still effective, would you say, Mike?
It is less expensive. We would need the microphone system. So while it's less expensive, it's still about $21,000. That includes the computer, the wireless microphone system, and a separate TV. Assuming you're not going to take the TV down behind Mayor Moffat and use that on a stand.
Right, and so let's remember too that a microphone system, even though this room is not all that big, the Aging Well Committee a number of years ago did recommend that we have a microphone system wherein those who had hearing challenges, if they're allowed to come back into the room, that they could sign out like a hearing thing, or that there's some way to have a microphone system that allows for those who need that. And so even if we didn't go with, you know, a headset system for members of the public, we already have a request in place from the Aging Well Committee for a microphone system. So, Mike?
If I may, at the county and the other municipalities where we put in these wireless microphone systems, we put speakers in the back of the room. So again, if you know, there's a member of council or a council who's not a loudspeaker, then it helps people sitting in the back who may be hard of hearing. As well, with those systems, there's an optional assisted listening device that ties into the microphone system, and like Mayor Moffat alluded to, has a little earpiece and a little receiver that you can hold on to. So again, if somebody's really hard of hearing, it would help them out. So the reason we put it in at the county was because of accessibility, an accessibility improvement.
Well, and there's, when's the next intake of accessibility funding? Is it, what's the, Madam CAO, what was planned for financing this? Is it modernization, as Councillor Dayu has suggested, or how are we going to pay for this? It is, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, okay, so what would the council, I mean, I want something that's as simple as possible and effective across the broadest range, that makes the most sense for the most reasons, is what I'm looking for. And I see a couple of nodding heads. Councillor Barry.
Just a question. This discussion has obviously focused on council meetings, but has there been consideration for committee meetings? Would all committee meetings have to happen in the council chambers now?
Madam CAO. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't believe council's made the decision whether or not they're going to be live streamed or not. So that decision would need to be made before council decided where they were going to be held.
So can we put that, let's put that on the next agenda, Madam Clerk, because with the EOC being dissolved with the lifting of the declaration, that conversation will shift to council, and council will recall that the previous EOC decision would be that committee meetings would be revisited in September. So that's perfect timing, and then we'll know better. So I think, to Councillor Berry's point, we would struggle to have folks on, say, you know, the Oxtongue Lake Recreation Community Center Committee or the Dorset Recreation Center Committee, you know, travel down to the main office. So that's some food for thought. But we also don't want to end up then saying, well, we're going to live stream everything and we have to, you know, triplicate this system in 3 places. Mr. March.
If I may, obviously, if it was the will of council and the municipality, you definitely could have your committee meetings in the room, and stream or not stream. We could do a setup for hybrid environments. The one thing you may want to consider, if council is leaning towards the option where everybody's running Zoom from laptops, I'm not sure if all of your committee members would have equipment suitable for this. So you may want to consider purchasing some extra laptops to have. Even if, you know, even with council just doing that option, there's going to be situations where, whoops, I drove down from wherever and I forgot my laptop, or my laptop's acting up today. You'll want to have a couple there as a spare, just in case.
Yeah, so that complicates it because not everybody even has a laptop. There are people who simply have a desktop. So now we're getting into an awful lot of complexity in terms of committee meetings. So, Councillor Berry.
Just a question. Do the meetings, if we were meeting in person, would they need to be live streamed or could they just be recorded? Am I missing something?
Well, I think the purpose is to live stream and record for people to make our discussions as public and transparent as possible. There are people who like to watch them happening live, and others who go back and look at them later. I think the commitment had been to live stream. I don't know if council's interested in changing that. And I don't know if it makes any difference in needing in the equipment. You still need the same equipment, do you not, Mr. March?
If committee members were to meet in the council chambers?
No, if, to Councillor Berry's question, if Is there any difference in the equipment requirement if council meetings are live streamed or simply recorded? You still need the same equipment to live stream and or record, you know?
Yes, basically, there may be a very minor savings in some of the streaming software we're looking at, but that might be a couple $100s.
Well, I have to say that I like the idea of going with the Zoom and spending the money on the television, the larger TV. I mean, I'd be happy if we were still sitting here, I would be happy to be looking at a larger TV screen of you folks up here. And that can still be used as we progress. It could also allow for folks who maybe want to come into as delegations or other reasons people might want to come into a meeting, but they are not here. It provides more access to our business. So that's the one I think I'd like to go with, is the Zoom with the extra TV. Makes the most sense to me. Thoughts, Councillor Dayu?
I agree.
Anybody else? And we can, Councillor Barry?
I agree. The only thing I can see there being an issue is if there was, a delegation that involved a large amount of people, maybe there needs to be consideration for a different venue or something like that.
Well, absolutely. If when we've done that in the past, even not during the pandemic, that when we know that there's going to be an issue that will generate a lot of interest in attendance, we just move it to the community center and put chairs out. So we can always do that. We did that before. We keep doing that. Mr. March.
Sorry, to clarify, when you said the option was Zoom with a larger TV, are we talking about the in-person, like everybody running Zoom from their laptops with an extra TV, or the microphones, the single camera, and the TV?
Yeah, to me, the TV would become the Zoom screen, is my understanding. Is that correct?
That's right. And you could have one single camera mounted on top of the TV carts that captures one view of all the in-room participants. And then you would need that microphone system. So basically that's the $21,000-ish option.
Councillor Dayu. And then, then just to be perfectly clear, if council is meeting in person, what's on their screen in front of them is just their agenda and their own notes, because we're using the TV as say that again for the 9th time, just clarifying. Councillor Dayu.
I think that internet notwithstanding, all of our personal equipment seems to have measured up for the last million years that we've been meeting on Zoom. So I'd like to think that we could continue to bear that risk, that one piece of equipment is going to go, or we can borrow our spouse's laptop or whatever it might be, to avoid the cost of the camera in the middle of the room. So my preference would be that we use our individual cameras on our individual equipment, and then have the microphone. Mike, would you kindly remind me what the cost of just the microphone would be?
The microphone. So the original solution had microphones that we currently use at the county, which Mayor Moffat and Deputy Mayor Danielson would be familiar with. And they're what's called unidirectional microphones. So it's kind of like with your gooseneck, you push it to speak, you push it to turn it off. And it's a wireless system. That's about just over $11,000. That's going to provide the best audio quality for people listening because it doesn't capture as much of the background noise. So for maybe about $1,000, you can just get a central microphone placed in the room. However, again, that's going to pick up noise from everybody. So if you have somebody who's clicking a pen, knocking on the table, that's going to all pick that up. So it may not be as clean of an experience for people listening at home.
I can assure you there is no clicking of pens in Algonquin Highlands.
And with the and also with the centralized microphone, it would have to be a centralized mic and speaker. So then you may run into issues, or we may have to revisit and look at what to do if in the future, when we open up and allow members of the public in, they may struggle hearing something from a central speaker in between the tables. And I haven't actually prepared or looked at what the option would be to take that microphone and pipe it into some ceiling speakers. I'm sure it can be done, but I may have to come back with a request for extra equipment if that's the request. or if that's the decision of council.
Yeah, and I have to say, my preference is, I don't mind spending extra money for the mics at each desk, as long as that would, as similarly to the county, includes the speakers. I have no problem investing money in an accessibility option, but I have a problem investing a bunch of money for our convenience and so we look good, which I know is not the intent, but the accessibility option at 11,000 is important to me. But again, if it's a buildable system we can build on, I mean, at some point we have to decide whether we're nickel and diming against the greater good of the outcome. And to me, the accessibility aspect has put a new spin on it. So look for thoughts on that, Liz.
I'm just wondering about an option where I've seen some places where there have been microphones sort of suspended from the ceiling.
If I may, I haven't looked into specific or any specific options, but I do know they exist. I'm not sure if that would be a cheaper option than what I've presented, because again, you'd have to wire everything back in, potentially have to wire everything back still into a central unit. So this is a cost savings exercise. I don't know if that will save any money. And again, you may run into the same problem with a microphone hanging from the ceiling, captures everything, and it may be harder to, well, it likely would be harder to mute, because I can't see how you would, versus a unidirectional microphone where you have a gooseneck and a mic in front of your face and a button to mute when you don't want to be on air, and then a button to press when you need to speak.
Liz?
Sorry for the traffic noise. Well, when Mike said it was $21,000 for the option and we were looking at it, I thought, well, if we're going to spend that amount of money, we might as well spend the $29,000 using a modernization funding and accessibility funding and have a system that doesn't give us problems. But with the exception of the issues that Mike talked about earlier, the prep time for council meetings, which is not good. I just, to be absolutely honest, I do not like the microphones that we've got at the county.
I'm not a fan of those, and I have a big voice and I rarely use mine anyway. Mike?
Just to clarify, both the option, I guess my original option and then option 2 would involve the microphone system that we use at the county.
I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's a bit of a challenge at the beginning to remember that when you raise your hand to speak, you're supposed to push your button so that your mic comes on. But again, that's not the end of the world. Mike?
And if I know, because of streaming and then what those microphones are, how your voice is picked up, I'm sure there's going to be a learning curve, but you will have to push that button. It's not like if it's an in-room meeting and if you're a loudspeaker, if you don't push it, then maybe the participants still hear you anyway. If you don't hit the speak button to talk, nobody on the Zoom call or watching from home will be able to hear you. So that it is something that you'll have to get used to, but it is what I see most other systems I see in place. It's some variation of a gooseneck microphone that you push to talk and then you push to turn off. Well,
we're very familiar with telling people that they're on mute, so it would be the same thing until we get used to it. Okay, so Liz is suggesting that if we're going to spend 21, we may as well spend 29. I don't. My concern with option 2 is the burden on the host to have to, every time somebody puts their hand up and presses their button to speak, that the host has to switch, and I think that's going to be problematic.
Yeah,
Mike?
Me too.
So if I may, if there is some indecision between my original option and option 2, so the single camera and the multi-camera can be added on after the fact. So you could start with one camera on the Zoom screen, the wireless microphone system, and if that goes well and we want to say, okay, well, we would like multiple cameras added to the system, we can. Obviously, there's extra money involved in that, but we can build upon the system that's been quoted here. We wouldn't have to scrap one option to bring in the other option.
Yeah, I like things that can be built on, and Jen, I do see your hand. And I can tell that we're all madly mulling in our brains at the moment. I would like to ask council what they see the challenge being in having a camera mounted on the TV, which would be like a talking head for anybody who's not with us. As opposed to like the multi-camera, and I say this a bit tongue in cheek, but like, who do we think we are that we need multiple cameras to come in close on our faces? If we have a camera that captures all of us and we have microphones, I feel strongly that that is sufficient, especially given that Mike has just said that we could build on it if we didn't feel it worked for us. Jen and then Julia, please.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the reason why we got into the question of let's see our faces is because, well, it is better. It's nicer to see folks' reaction. It feels like more of an intimate conversation, but mainly because we have had the Zoom experience. So I think at the time that the conversation originated, it was a no cost addition because we could just open up Zoom rather than thinking about multi-cameras, which has come along for very good reasons, but it's not where the conversation started. Mike, the question that I have, and I'm sorry, I bet you've said this today, and it's just everything in the hopper is switching around now so quickly. If we did have the multi-camera experience in the middle of the room, would that still be Zoom or would that be live streamed through a different software? The reason being, if we had delegations in the medium term or even in the long term, but I'm thinking before Ontario opens wide up post-pandemic, it might be in fact preferable if delegations came in on Zoom. And if we weren't Zooming, how would they bring themselves into our lived experience?
So if I may, all the options that I presented, including the original one, would still depend upon Zoom to do the virtual meeting portion of it. Just whether or not it displays on a big screen or everybody's laptops. Everybody's used to using Zoom. We're all familiar with Zoom now. I have no interest in changing that unless I have no other option. And at this point, that's not the case. Yeah,
and I think that's a really good point, Jen, that it may, and I think I alluded to this earlier, it may be the case that we've really turned a corner in terms of accessibility for, not accessibility with a capital A, but just public access to our business, and especially for planning matters. We had 3 public meetings this morning around zoning things that folks, if they wanted to, they could be at their home office somewhere and still speak to their issue. And I don't know if we've accommodated for that in our procedural bylaw, but I think this is a continually moving target as we mature into this new way of doing business. So can we wrap up then? I mean, I'm not hearing anybody, disagreeing on anything too broad. I think we've landed on Zoom, TV, 1 camera that could be built upon. If we decide that we really do want to have the extra cameras, we can add them. And just carry on in the same process, except we'll have to learn to use the microphones, which is an interesting process. But is that where and that will provide accessibility for when the time comes that people can come back into this room. There will be the audio option to enhance the room experience. Jen?
Mike, is there a hybrid option where we've got this center piece, but we also individually have our cameras on so that if we're saying something, it could go from central to us, or is that not possible or just too complicated?
If I may, I think that would be too complicated. I'm not sure off the top of my head how we could have one central camera getting a bird's eye view and then be able to switch to Zoom without some more complex software, some different. I would have to look at it, but off the top of my head, I say it'd be a bit more complex and more costly.
Right. Thank you. And so I'm not. I won't ask you to look at it. That was just a question in case. We can let that one go. Thank you.
Okay, so is that where we've landed then? Is Zoom, TV, central camera, microphones, and that is, Mike, around 21,000?
If I may, with the non-recoverable PST, which I usually factor in, you're at 21,500. There is an optional assisted listening device that we currently have at the county, and Minden Hills and Highlands East has had it. I don't know if anybody's ever used it, but it's an option there. So that would add probably about $1,100 on top of that, 21.5. And that's the transmitter and the little portable units, and then you could build off other portable units for a lot less than that 1,100.
Thoughts from council on that, Lisa Berry?
If we go with that option, what does the administrative look like for that?
What do you mean?
Like, so what Mike is he's saying that to go with what I see as option 4, almost, with what the county is doing with the multicam setup and a large projection screen.
It's
Would
not a
we
multicam. It's not a multicam setup. It's one.
It's one setup, or sorry, one large screen. Would there still be the administrative task like in option 2?
Mike?
If I may, then I don't think the meeting, so the meeting administrator, so the staff member who's controlling Zoom right now, that's not going to change. Their role is not going to change anything too drastically. Basically, I think as long as you're streaming meetings, we're always going to have some IT representation. I don't see how we get away from that. So you always need an IT person there, and there may be a bit more set up for one of us just to make sure the mics are all set up and everything and working, but nothing too crazy. Again, we're there an hour, half hour before each meeting. That will continue, and then we'll be setting up the equipment during that time.
Yeah, so it doesn't place any more burden on our staff to have to flip people in and out continually. I think that's an unfair addition, just so that we can have our individual faces on. I think that's completely unnecessary. Our job is to make our discussions available to the public. We don't necessarily have to have our smiling faces right in everybody's face all the time. Folks may have to get used to whose voice is whose, but that's okay. And we can build with the additional cameras if we determine that it's needed, or public feedback indicates that it's necessary for fulsome participation. Councillor Berry.
I guess this question is for Angie. With the modernization funding, would that be able to be completely funded?
Yes, we've still got money left.
Okay, so can we wrap this up then? I feel like we're kind of getting a little bit into the weeds. We will still be able to maintain full public access to our discussions, which is the point, and allow for some additional accessibility options. And it's build-onable. I made that up. It's build-onable, should we need it. So, okay, so Mike, do you get where we've landed here?
I do, thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. May I have a mover and a seconder for this discussion and reports? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the council receives a report regarding the audiovisual setup for Algonquin Highlands Council Chambers submitted by Mike March, Director of IT, dated August 12th, 2021, and the council directs the county's Director of IT to proceed with the installation of one streaming camera, 8-unit wireless microphone system with assisted listening device, and an additional TV, and to be expensed from modernization funding.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Yeah, good. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Item 9 is building and bylaw enforcement business. So we'll bring David in. morning, David.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
First up for you, and sorry to bear with me here because my screen has frozen again on Civic Web. Great. Okay, first up for you is a performance bond.
Through you, Mayor, the people have bought this piece of property on Buckside Road and they wish to build a garage and a new home on the property. And unfortunately, when they got their new home ordered, they found it was going to be June of 22 before they could get the building delivered to the property. So what they really want to do is put the garage up first while they're clearing the property and they can store some of the materials on the property. Unfortunately, our zoning bylaw does not allow accessory buildings without a principal use established. So that's why we're here to look into a bond agreement, which they've agreed to, and they will be applying for all their permits. But unfortunately, as I said, their home is not coming until June of next year. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I mean, we do these all the time. So, any thoughts, concerns, questions from council on this performance bond? Liz, go ahead.
So my question is the $5,000 that I understand that amount is basically to be used if in fact that they don't follow through with their residential development, that we would go in and possibly remove the building. I just want to make sure that we've got sufficient, that is now sufficient to do that. That it seems to me we've had the same amount in place for quite some time, and I know the cost of things has increased. I just want to make sure it covers any costs that we might have for follow-up.
Again, through you, Mayor, I agree that that fee has been in, or that bond amount has been in for a long time. That would be a decision, I guess, of council if they wish to raise that amount. We certainly can look at that.
David, have we ever used the $5,000 to demolish a building that was left illegally on a property?
Again, through you, Mayor, we haven't done that yet, no.
So, well, if you know, you guys want to give consideration to that, we're certainly not going to change that amount today. That would be a whole different process. But if that's something that you think should come forward, then we'll leave it to you to bring forward based on Liz's comments. But otherwise, if I don't hear any other concerns, so may I have a mover and a seconder on the performance bond? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council receives report BLDG 1621 submitted by David Rogers dated August 12, 2021, and that council hereby approves the request from the owners of property roll 4621002000501 to allow them to construct a garage prior to the construction of the dwelling, and that a performance bond in the amount of $5,000 be submitted, and that after the completion of the garage and within 1 year of the dwelling, in 1 year, the dwelling will be constructed, and that the new dwelling be constructed no later than October 31st, 2022. And further, the clerk is hereby authorized to sign the noted agreement.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. And second for you is monthly report, and of course, busy time of year. Anything you want to highlight there?
Again, through you, Mayor, the biggest change I've noticed this year, obviously permits are way up because we're past the last year's totals already. But the amount of bylaw complaints we're getting is really skyrocketing as well, which is taking up a lot of staff's time, but we are working through them as best we can. So our office is all very busy.
Yeah, and I have, I mean, we've spoken at this table and at the county table too, that enforcement, we know it's problematic in a lot of ways, and I have asked and recently reminded, not that I had to, but the CAO to, when budget time comes, to, you know, have a good look at whether or not we need more people, and then what the implication of that would be. You know, we try and make change and remain as progressive as we can, but enforcement comes with that. And we just, as David has said, we just don't have the bodies to enforce the things we're putting in place as the community is changing. So we'll look forward to that. Any questions of David on this report from council? Anybody? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive it. Councillor Dayu, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council receives for information report BLDG 1721 regarding July monthly activities. submitted by David Rogers and dated August 12th, 2020.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Parks, Recreation and Trails business is next. We'll bring in Mr. Card. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
First up for you is the ISIP funding agreement for the Recreation Center.
Yes, so very happy to announce that we have received confirmation of $100,000 in funding through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, which we applied for earlier this year. This funding would help support the costs associated with upgrading the HVAC system at the Dorset Recreation Center. And this would meet the needs for moving air through the building and recirculating air as required for COVID and pandemic related type situations, which will get us into the future if similar things happen again. And also, given the recent circumstances that council's been made aware of with the mold remediation, we'll be looking at how this will tie in with the considerations associated with that. So what this is a report to have council authorize the signature to enter into an agreement for this funding, which is of course provided by both the province and the federal government.
Yeah, terrific. And thank you for stitching it together with the current challenges there, because regardless of what happens, we still need an upgraded HVAC system for the facility. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Dayu.
Thank you. I presume the answer is no, or you would have already mentioned it, but just to be clear, you don't believe there will be any contractual hiccups about a possible delay given the current mold situation, or a redesign issue, or anything that would jeopardize this contract, given that we didn't know about the mold before submitting the proposal?
So the two will go hand in hand, and the timelines will be related with one another. And of course, this is a new situation relative to when we applied for this funding. There are provisions in the agreement to ask for any requests for changes or amendments to the agreement, including timelines. Presently, we have until the end of 2022 in order to complete this project, which gives us plenty of time to be able to get an understanding of timelines associated with the abatement project and request any amendments if required.
So that's great. Okay, thank you for that. May I have are there any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder for this report? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that council receives report PRT 1421 regarding Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Grant Funding Transfer Payment Agreement submitted by Chris Card dated August 12th, 2021, and the council directs the bylaw be brought forward to authorize the agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And up next is the item that I had added. This is a carryover from the EOC. As I mentioned, council will recall that the tower was to remain closed this year for a variety of reasons, but that it would be revisited. And so I asked that it come today, and Chris will talk to us about that.
Thank you. Yes. So bear with me as I kind of work through everything with this, as it's quite a complex situation, and with the number of moving parts, and throughout the pandemic, the EOC has discussed this at length and a number of times. So as I'm describing this, it's a very kind of long ongoing project and discussion that we've been having that's now ended here. So April of this year, the EOC did review based on existing COVID restrictions and direct at that time that in all likelihood, the tower would remain closed for the entire 2021 season. Typically at that time, that's when we're going through, and the reason we were having the discussion at that time is that's when we're going through recruitment, hiring, training of staff, getting people on site, getting the tower opened up, all which typically takes 6 to 8 weeks. We did have some return staff, et cetera, that we'd be able to work into the mix, but there's still some recruitment required. We decided, based on the restrictions at the time, which were very prohibitive, and for a number of other reasons, that we would not go ahead with all of those processes, which also have funding attached to them and expenditure requirements, and said that the tower would remain closed. Of course, a number of things have changed with COVID a number of times since then. And here we are at step 3 of the current roadmap to reopening. So we've been looking at the opportunities again. As the mayor discussed earlier, there has been a lifting of the declaration. And we discussed this yesterday at the EOC level, and looking at opportunities for how we would open the tower, when we would open the tower relative to the current restrictions. So we are currently in step 3, so I'll start there. The requirements are that we would have to limit the on-site capacity to the maximum group size capacity of 100 people. For a ticketed attraction or amenity, which would be the tower structure itself, we would have to limit the capacity there to 75%. Our current capacity is 30 people, so it would limit it to 22. Going on to the staffing considerations relative to that, which affect the timelines, we would be looking at best, an early to mid September opening timeframe for the property. Of course, that aligns right with peak operating season as far as fall colors go and visitation. So that brings us to considerations of traffic management. As council's aware, we've been working through and amending our traffic control plan there for a number of years, and quite successfully, but numbers have continued to increase as far as attendance goes at the tower in a normal year. When we're looking at what expectations could be during reopening at that time frame right after COVID, I look to industry trends, which are really countrywide and even throughout North America, where tourism attraction providers, including ourselves through our hiking trails, our parks, even through the winter, our ski trails, et cetera, we've been seeing, and most industries been seeing anywhere between, on average, a 36 to 60% increase in capacities or attendance. We've been seeing 80% at the water trails of an increase in attendance this year. So we can make a fairly accurate estimate that we are going to see an increase in attendance over and above what we would normally see during peak colors. Once I start to consider that, I need to consider how I'm going to manage those additional people, the traffic, on the high, people on site, what is most paramount being staff and visitor safety. In a normal year, as council knows, based on attendance numbers and maximum capacities, we work with the OPP through paid duty policing in order to be able to line vehicles up on Highway 35 with a traffic management plan and bring people through in a controlled manner. Typically, that's up to 1 to 2 kilometers of traffic lineup on the highway. And it is in conjunction. Put requests into them as we normally do for this time of year. And they have indicated that this year they do anticipate a challenge in meeting our needs based on increased demand on their side and staffing challenges relative to that. However, they are going to try their best, but they're letting me know right up front that they do anticipate a significant challenge. So starting to look elsewhere, was looking at possibilities for hiring a third-party security type company, which could not do traffic management, but could assist with people management and movement of people on site. And also help with any sort of insurance that any COVID regulations at the time are being met. on site to take that off of the staff who are not trained in those types of security related protocols if an issue arises. There's not many security companies in the area. The ones that I have reached out to have also indicated that meeting the needs and the timelines and the short timelines associated with what we're looking at doing and how much time we need staffing there, it's highly unlikely that they're going to be able to give us bodies for the periods that we need them for. I have submitted requests to People Ready, which is the organization that we normally work with to help with on-site traffic and lineup management at the tower, et cetera. And I'm waiting to hear back from them. So those two situations are such that they're unknowns, and these dates are very quickly approaching. Given that we would also have to restrict numbers on site further than what would normally be restricted, we could anticipate increased traffic lineups on the highway and increased congestion issues where an increased OPP presence or traffic control measures are put in place, which I cannot assure at the moment. All of those things being said, at this time, looking for thoughts from council and that given the timelines, the unsurety around what we are going to be able to do as far as traffic management control and the unfortunate kind of timelines associated with heading straight into peak season, that it really may not be the best time to be opening based on that.
And I would just like to add to Chris something that Lyle brought to the conversation yesterday, that there are private traffic control companies, but in order for them to do any work on the provincial highway, there'd have to be a permit submitted. There's no guarantee that that would be received in a timely manner. I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Liz and then to Councillor Jen. You're on mute.
I really believe that given all the challenges that we're facing, the short season that we would be offering to people, the limitations that we would have to have in place, and just the remaining unknowns, you know, with the pandemic and how that's going to, you know, how that will progress. That it's just not the wisest time to try and reopen the tower, given everything that Chris has said.
That's, yeah. Councillor Jen?
Yes, I agree with everything that Liz has said, and you know, appreciating all of the thinking that has gone behind this. It seems pretty unequivocal to me that we should not be opening it. It sounds like a perfect storm, frankly, and that's not something that we want to be responsible for. I would even go so far as to wondering if there's a way to block off, or maybe this is already in the hopper, but blocking off the parking lot from people even stopping, you know, in the parking lot during that time, just to keep folks moving by.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. I had a phone call from somebody 10 days or so ago that folks had taken a picnic table and leaned it up against the gate that closes off the tower itself. And so people were climbing a picnic table to get over the gate to get up the tower. So something that I think we need to be cognizant of is it's almost like we've created a monster. So we have we've had people outright disobey the OPP. There have been fistfights. There have been charges laid. Chris relayed a story yesterday that there was, I don't want to classify it as an OPP chase, but somebody drove their car through the barrier. So people, the Dorset Tower is tremendously popular. And I think that when you look at it, we need, I think it was Lyle said this yesterday, the reality is that we need people who have guns and special cars and vests and special training to manage the peak season of the Dorset Tower. And I wonder if it's time to think about, I have no idea how much it would cost or what it entails, but we may have to look at going at some sort of timed entry ticketing program. So you can go to the Dorset Tower on Tuesday at 2:30 because that's when you bought your ticket for. My concern with the kilometers of cars lined up. We've seen it, we've heard stories. There's people who just walk out between parked cars onto the curve there. The cars and the people are a challenge for the provision of emergency services to other residents and taxpayers and visitors. Yeah, there's a lot. It's far more complex than anybody would ever think. So I know I concur with what both of you have just said. I look to Councillors Berry and Shortreed for their thoughts. Julie?
It's a sad day and a terrible decision to have to make, but unfortunately, this late date, we're at the middle of August. I can't see how we would even get staff to manage a few people, let alone thousands of people. It's impossible. But I do like the idea of a time ticket, just like everything else with COVID. You're buying online, you're buying your ticket, you know beforehand you can go. If you don't, I think the ski resorts did it. So if you can't get your ticket online before you go, you can't go. I think that is a really good idea, something to definitely look into.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that input, Councillor Berry.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we were, if we were talking about this at the beginning of the summer, it's two different animals. I think the fact that what Chris is saying and going into the peak season is just asking for trouble. So I support holding off and maybe reconsidering a new approach early spring.
Mm-hmm. And we can ask that to be some options reflected at projects and priorities. CAO, if that's something that you think you can put together. I mean, you go anywhere in the world and you want to go to something. I mean, I'm not going to, compare the Eiffel Tower with the Dorset Tower, but there's lots of places that have gone to timed entry, as has been noted even just during the pandemic. Did I see another hand there somewhere? Yes, Councillor Dayu.
Yes, thank you. It was just to ask for that to be considered if we could see maybe some options for P&P. So thank you for saying that. Yeah,
great. Okay, so are you crafting, Madam Clerk? Yes. Oh, Madam Clerk is crafting. Mr. Card.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to add that one major thing that many people attend the tower for is what has become to be known as spectacularly tasting water from the well there. We have a water fill-up station. So just want to remind everybody, station at the Dorset Recreation Centre that does remain open for everyone, even though the centre itself is closed, and it's located just next to the entrance of the building. So everyone is welcome to go there. Unfortunately, as part of the closure of the tower property, it does also include the hiking trail, meaning there's no entrance from any point on the property there.
And there's been quite a bit of chatter about that. Folks are anxious. And again, perfectly understandable that folks don't understand why they can't just walk up the tower. And I responded to one set of folks and said, you may want to just hike up to the tower property for the benefit of your health, but others want to use the trail, to get to the tower and climb the picnic table and get over the locked gate. So we just can't separate, the good folks from the folks that are looking to just serve themselves. So it has to be a bit of a blanket approach on that. May I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, and I have something else to say before we read that, but go ahead, Jen.
Just if we are going to be looking at advanced ticketing, and I know I'm shifting conversation ever so slightly here, but I wonder if staff could consider what other things we do in our township that may also benefit from advanced ticketing. I don't know if access to the Dorset Rec Center or whatever it might be, the squash courts, I'm not sure, but it might be interesting to see the fuller package rather than just thinking about the Dorset Tower.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if you could go online and just book your squash court. I mean, that's a bigger bite, but while we're at it, we could probably have a look at that as well. I wanted to circle back briefly on what Chris had said about the water, and as folks know, we had a double whammy on the long weekend where unfortunately, after hours on Friday, the tap here failed and there was no parts or staff to fix it. So folks, as we know, then are then directed to the airport. And then without any reason why, as these things happen, the pump at the airport failed. So there was no water. And folks were quite upset by that, even though we do not have an obligation to provide drinking water. We have always happily done that as a courtesy to our citizens. So I did ask that the locations for water, including the new option at the Dorset Rec Center, go on the website, and then in the future, if and when there's a need to send out a news and notice alert that a tap isn't working, that the link would be provided to, but here's where else in Algonquin Highlands you can get water. Because a lot of people don't know, as Chris has pointed out, that there's the new tap there at the Dorset Rec Center. So just sort of full circle on that water issue in relation to that closure. Okay, so you have a resolution you're going to read. So we have a mover and a seconder, and here we go.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Dennison. Be it resolved that council directs the Dorset Tower and property remain closed for the 2021 season.
All in regretful favor. That is carried. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Card.
Thank you.
I would like to suggest a 10-minute break if council would support that. Okay, we'll see you back here at 10:30. Okay, we are live once again and reconvened. We're going to start with item number 11, Public Works Business, and we'll bring in Mr. Bergstrom.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning, Lyle. A couple things for you. First up is monthly activities. As with everybody else, quite busy this time of year. Is there anything you want to highlight for us?
I thought I'd just give a quick update on the Dorset Recreation Center. We do have a consultant coming in next week to do building assessment on the building envelope, ventilation, mold issue, and what's hopefully come back with a report telling us which direction to go and how to go about it. So obviously I will update you once that comes along.
Great, appreciate that update. Does council have any questions of Lyle on the monthly activity report? Deputy Mayor Danielson. You're on mute.
Just noting about the airport and the fact that there are a couple of hangars that are empty. And if we do any promotion at all with respect to the availability of hangars.
So I've had our airport coordinator work on a kind of pamphlet flyer advertisement piece that we will put on the website and maybe to some aviation magazines just to get it out there and advertised. So we are working on that.
Thank you.
That is perhaps something that our brand new communications coordinator might weigh in on as well, seeing as he's in day 4 of his job. Councillor Barry.
Yeah, 2 quick questions. The first is just about the food cycler. I know that there's been distribution. I just wonder what the uptake on that has been. And the second question is just about the landfill, specifically Maple Lake, if there's been any discussion in changing any of the layout for accessibility to some of the recycling area.
Yeah, so for the food cycler, uptake was great. They've all been purchased and are in use. I know some people feel that it's an awesome appliance to have on their counter, and others aren't as happy or not quite as used to the function. But all in all, good uptake, lots of good comments. And then for the Maple Lake landfill, we have had a look. The attendants there say that it actually operates better now than it did before. I know there's a lot of struggles with traffic and such, and that's why there's a Maple Lake Operations Center that we're hoping to get going with some tree clearing this fall for the upgrade. So we are looking at what we can do for the interim to make it better for landfill users. But in the end, hopefully, once the Operations Center is up, that will mitigate all those issues.
Yeah, but in accordance with your report, you said that there have been modifications for accessibility requirements. So some of those complaints have been addressed, do you feel, Lyle?
Melissa did include that stuff, and unfortunately she's not in today, so I didn't quiz her on what was done. I haven't been down to the landfill in the last couple of weeks, so unfortunately I don't have good information for you.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that, because I know I've heard from a couple of members of council that they've heard from folks who are concerned with, while we are in the process of reconfiguring the site, that there are some challenges for disposal. So we just need to keep an eye on that and make sure we can accommodate folks as best as we possibly can during the entire transition project. Lyle?
Yeah, I know one item that we'll have difficulty with is the railings around the dumpsters. Excuse me. Just for safety reasons, we have a railing, which also makes it difficult to lift bags over the railing into the dumpster. So we do have to look at what can be done there and still maintain a safe environment for the users. So that is still under review. I know that's one of the biggest complaints.
Yeah, well, and that's the best we can ask for is that it continue to be considered and modifications made as deemed doable and appropriate to help folks out. Any other questions for Lyle on his report? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives for information Public Works Report PW 3021 regarding July monthly activities submitted by Lyle Bergstrom and dated August 12, 2021.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next up is the contract renewal or the agreement renewal with Recollect for the Waste Wizard. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to the report. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions on this renewal? I have a mover and a seconder to do so. Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives Public Works Report PW 3121 regarding the 2021 Recollect Culvert Service Agreement renewal submitted by Melissa Murray dated August 12, 2021, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the agreement with the final form and content being to the satisfaction of the operations manager and chief administrative officer, and further that bylaw be brought forward authorizing the agreement.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And the agreement update with the Lions Club for the collection program at the Dorset Transfer Station.
Again, I have nothing further to add to our report. If there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions? My only thought was that, as the Lions have noted, there have been some challenges with who gets to the bottles first, and I think we need to try to resolve that internally as best we can. But any other thoughts from council on the report or the recommendation? And if not, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council receives Public Works Report PW 1321 regarding the Dorset Lions Club deposit return container collection program update submitted by Melissa Murray and dated August 12, 2021 for information, and that council concurs with the recommendation made in the said report for continued collaboration with Dorset's Lion Club and provisions of space at the Dorset Transfer Station for the Dorset Lions Club operation of a deposit return container collection service as per the terms of the 2019 agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bergstrom.
Thank you.
There's just the monthly activity report for fire services. The fire chief is not with us, so I certainly probably can't answer any questions, but Is there anything anybody wants to discuss on that fire services report and stats? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive it. Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Shortreed.
By Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that Council receives fire services report FD 1421 regarding monthly activities submitted by Michael French dated August 12, 2021. The Council accepts with regret the resignation of firefighter Lucas Donhouse effective July 26, 2021.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Number 13 is finance business, and I believe Madam Treasurer is coming in to join us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Jeannie. First up for you is tax write-offs.
Yes, thank you. So I do have a report on the tax write-offs from of late. One thing I need to note is that there was an addition error, but they're very straightforward. The addition error is that the total is actually $2,937.78, not as written in the report, but we have amended the resolution accordingly, which will for the clerk to read.
Okay, that's great. Any questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu, be it resolved the Council acknowledge the receipt of report TT 11/2021 regarding tax write-offs submitted by Karen Mintz and dated July 21st, 2021. And the Council hereby approves the noted tax write-offs under section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act for taxes in the amount of $2,937.78.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. For you, next is Jeannie's the draft purchasing policy, and this is quite a big document with lots and lots of changes, and I know it's taken a tremendous amount of time to find your way through it. So take it away for us.
Thank you again. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge that normally what happens is that we bring our original policies forward to council with a red line through it with the changes noted as such. In this case, because we've adopted or we're suggesting a vastly different document, it was felt that a red line of the original would have been really confusing. And we went from like a 24-page to this one is about an 82-page document. So it is a lot more elaborate than what we'd had. So this is why we didn't provide you with the original redlined. So, but as it indicated in the report, in response to the service delivery review, which was done last year, we are talking in discussions about countywide purchasing opportunities. And so when I went to investigate what other municipalities had for purchasing policies, I found that there was 2 other municipalities in Haliburton County, as well as the county, all showing having pretty much the same purchasing policy in place. So through discussions with Angie, it was felt that it would be an opportunity for us to sort of adopt a very similar policy so that purchasing countywide would be much easier for those involved. So as I say, I've outlined in the report sort of the differences or the each section of the new policy. Not sure if you want me to go through each section or whether you just want, like, if you have questions in relation to the policy itself. I do have a couple items that I do need council's thoughts on further than what we've kind of decided or as a department heads and CAO.
Jeannie, how about you tell us what you would like our input on? I have a couple of things I did check with the CAO on them, but would raise, and there are a number of things that need a little tweaking to come back. And we can go through those, but if you want to ask us what it is you're looking for direction on, we can maybe start there.
Okay. So the first item is under the general conditions and guidelines section. One of the items in there, previously known as township promotion, is now considered or called vendor promotion. And
Sorry, excuse me, can you tell us what section of the policy you're referring to?
yeah, I can. That's the general provisions section, which is section 8. I'm just turning to it as well. So it's 8.6 is the actual section. So the original purchasing policy read that the township shall not promote or advertise any vendor, service, commodity, or in any manner that may be construed as the township endorsing a vendor, commodity, or service. We've added a piece to indicate that sponsorship, donations, or the purchase of advertisement space in municipal publications may be permitted upon council approval. Reason for adding that section is because of publication that we've taken on, for example, the Ski of the Frost brochure. It was inherited from the Ski Friends of the Frost group, and it's an annual brochure that was formally produced through donations and advertising opportunities, and we've kind of continued the tradition, or wish to continue the tradition. So we just want to ensure council is supportive of this caveat to allow certain situations for promotion.
Yeah, and I had actually received clarification that I wanted to ensure that it was fully understood that it doesn't contravene our donation policy, and it's meant to be something different. So that's an important distinction to make. And what I would ask council is, we don't, not unlike, not unlike the requests to waive rental fees at the community centers, I hope that council doesn't want to make individual decisions on this, and I hope that if council in general supports the addition of this this piece, that staff would be allowed the discretion to undertake it without bringing, a little request to us every single time. Not that it happens often, but not sure we need to be in those day-to-day weeds. So looking for thoughts from council on that. Liz? You're on mute.
I was glad to see this because, you gave us an example, and the county has a map that they distribute, and they sell spaces on the outside of it to help cover the cost. I think it's reasonable that we set a specific fee for the amount of space that's being taken up, and that we don't consider different circumstances or different fees or waiving fees, that it's just black and white. You can rent this or purchase a space for X amount of dollars. And there may be further opportunities where we can do that. And to me, that's just another thing that mirrors what the county's doing or what other municipalities are doing. I was really pleased to see this document and to see this move towards greater levels of cooperation for purchasing.
Okay, so my question still is, the council doesn't want to see any such sponsorship requests or invitations one by one. We would leave it with staff to just simply manage within their discretion. Okay, I'm seeing yes. So that's your direction there, Jeannie.
Okay.
And what's your other one?
The other one is just a couple of items that are changed in comparison to the other. Sections 14 to 16. We added a section of official point of contact. So I just wanted council to be aware that we've kind of denoted a specific official point of contact in comparison to previous. And then the other is that the new policy is allowing for an evaluation committee and or some selection procedures, which is a little bit more elaborate than what we'd had in previous purchasing policy. So again, that's under section 17. So it's just giving that opportunity for more involvement in the evaluation process when necessary.
And so is council fine with that? Any questions, comments, concerns there? Okay, that's your answer there.
Okay.
Do you have anything else that you require direction specifically on, Jeannie?
The only other one, it's not really direction, but I just wanted to make sure that council was aware that we've changed the approval levels slightly from the existing policy with this new policy, kind of in conjunction with what we've seen and with the other municipalities. And that's under Appendix A. So I wanted council to be sure that they're comfortable with the changes that we've made. Again, it was all in discussion with the department heads and the CAO. So the limits, the existing limits were 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 5,000, and going forward, we have now adjusted it to 100 or less, 5,000. Like there's just some changes within those limits, just in response to the market, as well as I said, what we're seeing with the other municipalities.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Thoughts from council on that? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I think that's fine. Is that it for you, Jeannie?
Yes, other than, as I said, if anybody has any questions.
I have a couple of comments that from our conversation yesterday in Section 8, back to general conditions and guidelines. I had an inquiry about 8.1D. And 8.1D, I found quite confusing, and in conversation with the CAO, there's going to be, I think, some tweaking there. And I don't know, because it says, due to a higher level of diligence required, no employee, elected official, or volunteer acting on behalf of the township will be considered for an award of contract without prior approval. So there was a couple of problematic pieces around that. And I wonder, Madam CAO, you took some notes yesterday, and if you wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, our conversation, there was some confusion, I think, around, the ability for, particularly with council, when there's an award of contract, to obtain prior approval. So there was so I think, Jeannie, we need to work on some wording around that.
And just to clarify, that's not to allow any greater access to award of contracts. It's to just clarify the prior approvals and the possible process related to that could be problematic and to shut people out. And I guess it's around things like, in the future, if a member of council ran a gravel company and they were going to, I think we've lost Liz, have we? Oh, there she's back. We need to make sure that the internal process flows well enough and in conjunction with our existing code of conduct, that it doesn't create unnecessary roadblocks to what can be just a clear process-based approach to this idea. Councillor Jen.
Would you kindly clarify what the wording concern is? Because when I read it, I think, oh yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So I guess I'm not getting what your concern is with wanting to reword that.
I think it's just further clarification, and I apologize. I have scribbled pencil notes from yesterday, but I didn't write down what we talked about. I kind of left that to the CAO. So, can you speak to that a little bit, Angie, or did you not write down what I wrote down, or didn't write down?
I didn't write down your concern. I wrote down sort of that we were going to clarify the wording. I believe your concern was that it would conflict with the code of conduct. Is that, if I recall correctly?
That actually that's the section 8.11.
Okay.
And I do want to make sure I do. That's okay. I want to. So we I should have written down more clearly what it was that the concern was. If council thinks it's fine and that it reads very clearly, then then what I think doesn't necessarily hold water. So if the rest of council thinks that is clear, then we can leave it. But if there's any concern that it reads funny, then it can be tweaked, as it were. So would look to council. Jen obviously thinks it's fine, so if it reads clearly, let me know. Julie?
I completely understood it when I read it.
Hey, it could have been just me, that's fine. Anybody else? Okay, so then we'll leave it as it is because clearly I was the only one that had trouble reading the sentences. That's fine, that's why there's eyes on, right? That's a good thing. And the only other one then is talking about under the conflict of interest section, under gifts and hospitality, I had just asked to ensure that it dovetails with the existing code of conduct, because the existing code of conduct says that there's a $200 limit for, a ball cap or a trinket. This is meant to be much more tight, where there are no gifts. So I just asked that those two things align internally somehow.
Okay.
And that was it. Councillor Berry.
Just a question on Appendix A. When it breaks down all of the sort of monetary do's and don'ts of 100 or less, 5,000 or less, etc., where it says approved by department head or designate, I'm thinking, how does this work with committees of council that don't necessarily have a designate head? Would that be the chair? And there does seem to be a big gap between approving something for $100 all the way up to 5,000 in that specific case.
Well, committees would work within the budget they've presented and which has been approved by council. So this isn't for committees, this is for staff. Like a committee wouldn't issue an RFP or a tender or authorize any such purchase that was not already contained in its budget. And even if a committee wanted to undertake if the museum folks wanted to undertake a building project, they themselves don't enter into negotiations or sign contracts. That still comes in through council and then gets handled by staff.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Or do you still have it? Now's the time.
Well, I was thinking more something like if let's use the museum, they wanted to get a door or window replaced. So if it was, $1,000, where would that fit?
It would land with Public Works. So there would be, the museum committee would say we need a new window, and it would show up in the minutes, which council would approve. And then the outcome of those minutes through council resolution is given to staff, who then go and get the window.
Okay.
So these limits then allow them the opportunity to go and get the window at the behest of the committee volunteers who are requesting it. Does that clear that up a little? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I agree with Liz. I think this is a great move. It's a bit of a meaty document, but it certainly covers all the bases. Are there any other questions, concerns, comments, thoughts on our virtually brand new purchasing policy? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive it as amended? Do you want it to come back? Or can we just have that one section amended for clarity and just leave it at that? Just make sure that we don't have a code of conduct and a purchasing policy that conflict. I just ask that those two things somehow be amended. I'm confident we can leave that with staff to make sure there's no conflict there. Council agree with that? I'm seeing nods. So yeah, so we'll go with as amended. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive this policy as to be amended? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, the council receives Treasury Report TT 1221 dated August 12, 2021 regarding the draft purchasing policy, and further the council approves the draft policy as amended and directs the bylaw be brought forward to adopt the policy.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next up, Madam Treasurer, is the account summary. Does anybody have any questions on that? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Councillor Shortreed. Seconder. Councillor Barry, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the August 12th, 2021 account summary in the total amount of $884,656.04 and hereby approves payment as same.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Treasurer.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the department heads and Angie and council as well for their assistance with this daunting document. It was a bit of a chore, so it was good.
But nice to have it completed.
For sure.
Great. Well, thank you for your work on it, your leadership on it. Administration business is next, and we'll go to the clerk for her e-signature software report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Purpose of the report is to request council's consideration to purchase some e-signature software. At the May 6th meeting, staff brought a preliminary report with a e-signature policy and had indicated that staff was looking at some technology to purchase to provide for electronic signatures. Since that time, the county's IT department looked at 3 different software solutions and have recommended going with OneSpan Sign. Staff here have had a brief demo on it, and it looks very user-friendly and will definitely create efficiencies and time savings in getting agreements signed and other documents. So all the 5 municipalities within the county had recommended that we use the same policy moving forward as well. So I've also attached a revised signature policy that just enhances some security provisions, some wording, and as well as staff responsibilities in the policy. So it's just before council for approval. We are also recommending that, as it was not included in the budget, we take this from the initial cost from modernization funding.
Yeah, terrific. Nice to see that everybody's working together on it, and there's some additional security aspects to it. Any thoughts, questions, comments from council on this policy? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the council receives report CO821 e-signature software submitted by Don Roanoke dated August 12, 2021, and that council approves the implementation of OneSpan Sign e-signature software and the number of license required to be determined by the CAO, and that the initial subscription cost be funded from modernization funding, and the council directs a bylaw be brought forward to adopt the revised e-signature policy and further the directs an agreement required with OneSpan for the implementation of e-signature software be brought forward for approval at a future council meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Planning business is next, so we will bring Mr. O'Callaghan back in. Welcome back, Sean.
Hello, thank you.
First up for you is an application for a showroom closing allowance in the name of Smith on Halls Lake.
Yes, this property, they've applied to purchase the shore road allowance. It is on Halls Lake. It is a developed piece of property. It does appear that there are some structures located on the shore road allowance, but I would recommend they proceed through the regular steps to close that shore road allowance.
Questions, thoughts from council? May I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be resolved, the council receives report PL 6221 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing application OSRA 2312 fronting property located at part of lot 15, concession 7, geographic township of Stanhope, Smith, Halls Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated August 12, 2021, and the council approves in principle application SRA 2321, made to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next, again, application on Quagama Lake in the name of Wilkinson.
Yes, this is another application to close the shore road allowance in front of the property. It is a developed piece of property as well. And again, there is what appears to be some structures located on the shore road allowance, but I would recommend they proceed through the regular steps to close that.
Questions, thoughts from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council receives report PL 6321 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing application OSRA 2412, fronting property located at part of lots 13 and 14, concession 11, geographic township of Sherburne, Wilkinson, Quagama Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callahan, dated August 12, 2021, and that council approves in principle application OSRA 2412 made to stop up, close, and pay the said shore road allowance, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. Next, again, an application for a closing in the name of Lalonde on Quagama.
Yes, so this application, the next, they're both applications to close a road allowance, not a shore road allowance. So this is a road allowance that leads to water on Quagama Lake. And generally, our policies do not support the closing of a road allowance that leads to water. However, there are exceptions in that policy, which I've listed in my report, and that the one that applies here is that it's a road allowance that leads from water to water. So in this case, there is an exception that would support the closing of the road allowance, and it is a joint application with both properties on either side of that road allowance. So for that reason, I am recommending that it proceed through the steps as outlined in our closure of a road allowance policy.
Questions from council? Any clarifications required there? Nope. May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council receives report PL 6412 regarding the proposed road allowance closing application RA 001A21 adjacent to property located at part of lot 17, concession 12, geographic township of Sherburne, Milan, Quagama Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callahan and dated August 12, 2021, and that council approves in principle application RA 001A21 made to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the said road allowance, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. And then the other half of this, the closure under the name of Bredette.
Yes, so this is the application for the other side. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Anything from council? Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved that council receives report PL 6521 regarding the proposed road allowance closing application RA 2A21 adjacent to property located at parts of lot 17 and 18, concession 13, geographic township of Sherburne, Bredette, Quagama Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callahan and dated August 12, 2021, and that council approves in principle application RA 002A21 made to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the said road allowance, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I think Councillor Dayu might be frozen. No, she's not frozen. There, she's back. Okay. All right. Next up is bylaw for Sinclair on Cashog Lake.
Yes, this is the bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of the property. It was circulated for comment. No objections or easements are required, and staff are recommending the shore road allowance, or the bylaw to close the shore road allowance, be approved as presented.
Questions for council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Berry.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, the council receives report PL 6621 regarding the Grove Shore Road Allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 3, Concession 7, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Sinclair, Crucial Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated August 12, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up closing of the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried, thank you. Same again for Watson on Oxton.
Yes, this is another bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property on Oxton Lake. Again, no objections were received or easements required, and staff would recommend approval of the bylaw to close the shore road allowance as presented.
Any questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 6721 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 5, Concession 12, Geographic Township of Stanhope, McClintock, Watson, Oxton Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated August 12, 2021, and the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up closing of the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried, thank you. And again, the last bylaw for Burnett on Big Hawk.
Yes, the last bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of the property on Big Hawk. No objections were received or easements required, and staff are recommending approval of the bylaw to close the shore road allowance as presented.
Any questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 6821 regarding the shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 19, Concession 11, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Burnett, Big Hawk Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated August 12, 2021. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up closing the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That is carried, thank you. And finally for you, Sean, is circling back for, I think, ratification is the wording for the correspondence about the LPAT.
Yes, this was council directed staff to bring back a revised resolution that was supporting the short-term changes as presented by the town of Halton Hills. So really, I've just crafted that resolution to support the short-term changes and can certainly answer any questions the council may have.
And I believe it was Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu that wanted to speak to this. So are you folks satisfied with where we've landed on this? Liz?
Yeah, I appreciate that Sean's done on this on our behalf, and I'm satisfied with his recommendation.
Okay, and Jen's nodding. Okay, great. May I have a mover and a seconder for this piece of correspondence? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, the council receives report PL 6921 regarding correspondence regarding LPAT from the town of Halton Hills, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated August 12, 2021. And further, the council supports the proposed short-term changes as outlined in the Township of Halton Hills resolution, specifically that the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing immediately restore the amendments to the Planning Act that mandate the evaluation of appeals on a consistency and conformity with the provincial policies and plans basis.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
External boards, I think we'll see ourselves slowly getting back to more of these boards with time. I will jump straight to item E, which is the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, which is living at the county. It's coming along, and I think I might have said prior that in the beginning I was quite skeptical about this process, but now that I'm seeing it unfold, it's actually for me turned into quite a meaningful process, and I'm really enjoying what's coming out of it. But while there is certainly lots of opportunity ahead of us as a community to better support and make changes for certain vulnerabilities in our community, there's gonna be some big changes that we'll see at the lower tiers. I mean, it's living at the county, but there will be some changes too, I think, just in terms of, financial contributions and whatnot to implement the changes that are going to come from this plan. So stay tuned for that. It's turning into be perhaps a lot more work than I had anticipated. I don't mean work for me. I just mean work on the bigger sort of shifting of how the county as a whole is going to address some of the challenges that are being identified. But it's really good work. So if there's something that piques your interest around vulnerabilities in our community, this is the process to watch. So stay tuned for more on that. Library board, it has my name beside it, but I always ask Liz because she's on there as the warden. Is there anything that we need to tell everybody about the library board?
I just that they're in the midst of the process to hire a new CEO. So we look forward to that. The library has set standard hours going forward, which will carry through, unless something tumultuous happens, will carry us through the winter.
And I believe the work at the Stanhope location has, after many delays, has actually begun. So that's good news as well.
Yay.
Yeah, and Angie's nodding. So, and Eeyore, anything you want to tell us there, Madam Warden?
No. I may have some news after AMO, which is this weekend.
Right. I was going to say, well, that was a succinct reply. All right, well, keep us.
I should comment that there may be some things I would like to say, but the answer remains no.
That was very politely stated. Okay, general business. We have some correspondence. The Halls and Hawk. Oh, I forgot my book. The Halls and Hawk Lake Property Owners Association this year is celebrating their 75th anniversary, and they've undertaken a range of activities. And one of them is getting approval for a flyby. So you have the correspondence there before you, and they're looking. The local approval is needed for the flyby to occur. So looking for thoughts from council on that. Lots of people love when the planes fly low and other people don't. So no matter what decision we make, we'll upset somebody. That's guaranteed. Liz, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think that they're obviously doing a lot of work, trying to, revitalize their AGMs and or their meeting process, and I'd like to support this request.
Councillor Dayu?
I actually haven't heard a single person say to me that they have not thoroughly enjoyed those low-lying flybys. It's such a treat up here. I'd like to support the request as well.
Yeah, they will do, and I did receive some additional information from Mr. Lenouveau around their intent to provide regular updates and news and take responsibility for sharing the information as best they can, and that it's 500 feet, which is kind of low, but I agree. Most people like it. Some don't. Yeah. Liz.
Yeah, I have heard one person. I mean, I love aircraft and them flying over and looking at them, but I did hear one person tell me that the really big planes actually terrify her. I don't know what she thinks is happening, but once assured that they were normally there, practicing for operations that save us or save our forests, or I think she calmed down a little bit about it.
Yeah, and we certainly can make sure that the information that goes out through the Halls Hawk Lake Association can be shared out through our news and notices. And we also know when we do that other lake associations are pretty quick to share that out. So again, if you aren't in any way in receipt of this kind of information, it's a bit of a struggle to understand why, because it's shared so widely. So okay, so we'll support that, and the language for the letter is there, and the Halls Hawk folks will be thrilled. I did receive a copy of the book that Joan Hamilton did with Many Hands Helping for the Halls Hawk anniversary. I just got it dropped off last night, fresh from the printers, and I meant to bring it and hold it up and I forgot, but it's a beautiful book, and this Lake Association has done a tremendous amount of work for this anniversary, and kudos to them. So good job all around. May I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution for this flyby? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved that council receives correspondence from Hall Lake Property Owners Association regarding a written request for approval for a RCAF flyby at their annual general meeting being held on September 4th, 2021 in Elvin Johnson Park. Further, the council authorizes the mayor to sign a letter of approval for the RCAF flyby.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is something that I asked to be on the agenda, and it has since been taken to the county level by the warden. The time has come for us to consider land acknowledgement, and I wanted to just run something by council that a year and a half ago when I was at an event, actually it was the OPP Detachment Board Development Roundtable in Aurelia. Being held in Aurelia it was on, of course, on the Rama First Nation, and there was an elder who spoke to the group. And I had asked for his business card, sort of thinking that this was in the works. I've since reached out to him asking, in the 1850 or 1851 census, there were some folks from Rama who were captured in that census because this was summer traveling territory for those folks. So what I wanted to ask council is, does council want to move forward with a land acknowledgement for the municipality? And then I also wanted to ask about, some land acknowledgements can be quite lengthy, and I wondered about taking some time to do a little bit of research, or certainly I'm not sure who might do it, but to be able for us to do a little bit of a presentation to provide some context for Algonquin Highlands specifically and its Indigenous use over time. I know that we're all part of the Williams Treaty lands, but I believe that I understand that there were slightly different uses. I don't want us to have, I prefer us to have something that's particular to Algonquin Highlands and not something that's just, well, we just made this general statement. And then I thought we could take the opportunity to have a bit of a presentation to explain the context of Algonquin Highlands in Indigenous life. And then we could have a longer recognition statement in that process, and then have just a shorter land acknowledgement at the beginning of meetings. So we could do two things: have an educational component that could be crafted specifically for Algonquin Highlands, and then go forward with a shorter acknowledgement before each meeting. But we'll leave that up to council to discuss. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Yeah, I really like that idea of it, doing a little bit of research specific to Algonquin Highlands and presenting that as an initial outlay, but having a shorter one for every meeting. I know some of the acknowledgements are quite lengthy that different organizations use. Maybe we could use the longer one for, say, our inaugural meetings, and but the shorter one for our regular meetings. I should tell council that at the last Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, this particular issue was raised. One of the wardens asked, what other counties were doing, and their municipalities. And I honestly, I was quite ashamed that we were the only county that did not do an acknowledgement to date. Mind you, a lot of those other counties have reserves, have large Indigenous bodies within them, but they do a lot of things. They've done a lot of sensitivity training. They have acknowledgements. They have regular meetings with their Indigenous groups that are in the area about areas, joint areas of interest. And it became quite apparent that we needed to do something as a county. So I'm really glad to see that coming up at the lower tier as well.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I do know. Interestingly, I just mentioned about the Halls Hawk Association and their anniversary and the book. Small town. My neighbor Jim Moore, who used to be the chief building official for the township, his family has been on Hawk Lake for a long time, and he recalls seeing Indigenous folks on the lake when he was a very young boy. And in fact, his family possesses, I don't know which member of his family has it, but somewhere in his family is a birch bark and quill stitched basket that his mom traded. And so those are the things that I'd like to pull out for us that are meaningful for us as a municipality on our land. We also know there has been a substantial collection of flints and arrowheads that was found on Boschkung, which currently lives in the Minden Hills Museum. We wouldn't really have anywhere to store it that would be safe, but so there are some particular stories that are specific to us, and I'd love us to be able to pull those out. There's been some work done up at Oxton Lake. Mind you, any First Nations sites are a strictly held secret for reasons of pillaging, so we wouldn't be going in that direction at all. But we just know there are bits and pieces that I think would be fabulous to stitch together about our particular connection to Indigenous use of these lands. Jen?
I'm delighted that we're having this conversation. I agree with Deputy Mayor Liz that I think we're overdue for it. I would also encourage that we consider putting just a small page on our website with some of these additional details about the history, including a link to the treaty map that is now widely available, so that folks who are interested can just click on a link and see where we are in conjunction to the very complex overlay of where the treaties were and what happened within them. I think it's a lovely thing that we could do for public awareness. So I'm glad that we're looking into this and hopefully going to agree today to do it.
Madam CAO?
I just wanted to let council know as well that Highlands East is organizing some Indigenous awareness training. It's a 2-day training session that all of the municipalities are going to be taking part in. So we may be able to gather some information to bring back from that as well.
Yeah, additionally, there's an Indigenous awareness training through AMO that it looks like it's been so oversubscribed that they have to keep adding dates to it. Is that the training that you're speaking of, Angie?
No, it's through a different company, but I know that one has been extremely popular.
Will that be online?
No, it's in person.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so who can go to that? Can we go to that?
They are only able to accommodate 3 staff members from each municipality due to the numbers.
Right. Well, and I dare say that we happen to have recently employed someone who has an extremely strong research background. So this could be Mr. Ingram's first project for us, if that suits his job description, and the CA was nodding, so and I'm sure Chad's watching. So Jen.
One point to remember, I believe, is that Algonquin Highlands territory, as it currently stands, does overlap with Algonquin Park to a certain degree. And Algonquin Park has a very recent and very specific history with the Indigenous folks who were on that space before the park was established about 127 years ago. So that adds a small layer of complication, but I think it's worthwhile researching it and then figuring out what we want to do with that. It's a lot more recent than the treaties, but I think it bears bearing in mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Lisa Berry.
I do support the initiative. I think it's great that this is coming forward. It's never too late to do the right thing. I am looking forward to, and I hope that in doing the research that we can work with elders so that we don't just don't do our interpretation, that there is some back and forth discussion. I think that's important.
Yeah, and that's why I reached out to the gentleman from Rama, and he said that he would be happy to review what we put together to make sure we have the correct who's who certainly from the Rama First Nation perspective. I mean, they're just one nation that touches this land, but it's a start. So yeah, okay, good. So council supporting that, and we'll I just look forward to having some sort of presentation, as Jen has said, for the public education part, so that we can all know together what's important. So do we need a resolution on this, or is this, what are we doing there? We don't need a resolution, okay. Did I see another hand there? No. Lisa Berry.
Just after our last discussion with zoning comprehension bylaw, I was reviewing our cultural plan, and I did notice that there's some wording in there. And is there a timeline for possible review of the cultural plan? As like, can we amend that if there's no, like, in it it's mentioned Aboriginal opposed to Indigenous, and I know that's a new,
Yeah,
acceptable.
certainly, yeah, the language reference or the the identity reference has been updated, and it's Indigenous is preferred over Aboriginal because they mean different things. I understand. So we can ask the cultural committee when committees meet again to circle back and bring that forward. Keeping current. Okay, thank you for that. Next up is correspondence. Did anything get brought forward? No. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence listing? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Berry.
By Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Berry, be it resolved that council receives the correspondence listing for the period of July 8th to August 4th, 2021 for information.
All in favor? Carried. So we are finished the open portion of the meeting, and I will ask for a mover and a seconder to move into closed session. Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu, be it resolved that council adjourns its open session at 11:32 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following. 1, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal local board employees, litigation or potential litigation in accordance with section 2392B, 2392E of the Municipal Act 2001 SO as amended, zoning compliance matter. 2, personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees in accordance with section 2392B of the Municipal Act 2001 SO as amended. And 3, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees in accordance with section 2392B of the Municipal Act 2001 SO as amended.
All in favor? That's carried. So we'll just take a moment.
Lisa,
No. So if you just hang on a second. Lisa Berry, do you have a question, or you're on mute?
Was the discussion on the EOC or the emergency order, was that going to be in after closed?
What discussion? What discussion do you think you mean?
I thought that you said you were bringing something. I thought you were adding something to the agenda on that item.
It was the Dorset Tower discussion.
Okay.
All right, so we'll now move to closed session. Okay, we are reconvened. May I have a mover and a seconder to resume the open session? Councillor Dayu, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson, be it resolved that council adjourns closed session at 12:42 p.m. and open session resumed.
All in favor? That's carried. May I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws? I guess they're already. Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Berry.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry, be resolved that the following bylaws be received for the first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2021-85 being bylaw stop up close and bay part of the original Shore Road allowance, fronting Lot 19, concession 11, geographic Township of Stanhope, Baycock Lake, Burnett. Bylaw 2021-86 being a bylaw to stop up closing the bay, part of the original shore road allowance running. Part of lot 3, concession 7, part of lot designated as road allowance Sinclair. Bylaw 2021-87 being a bylaw to stop up convey abutting property owners, part of the original shore road allowance running. Lot 5, concession 12, geographic Township of McClintock, Watson. Bylaw 2021 being a bylaw to adopt an electronic signature policy. Bylaw 2021-89 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a transfer payment agreement between the corporation and Township of Algonquin, Highlands, and Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure with respect to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream, local improvement intake. Bylaw 2021-90 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement between the corporation and Township of Algonquin, Highlands and Recollect Systems Inc. for the provisions of the multi-lease wizard event calendar and mobile app. And Bylaw 2021-91 to adopt a purchasing policy as amended.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortby.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortby, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-92 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its regular meeting on August 12, 2021, be received and read first time, considered read a second, third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal of face.
All in favor? It's carried, and may I have a mover and seconder for the adjournment? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Shortby.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortby, be it resolved that the August 12, 2021 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 12:34 p.m.
All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation today.